America, what is poppin'? What is going on? I hope every single one of you is having a great Friday, Tuesday, Monday, whenever you are listening to this. I hope you're having a great day, and I am so thankful that you're tuning into this show here. I got a great one in store for you guys. Do not miss out on this. I'm Nick Jeldricks. I am the founder and director, I guess you could say, of Triple J. If you don't know what I do or what Triple J is a platform that is designed for yourself, and whether you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, a digital marketer, or just a business professional that is wanting to learn more about the marketing space and strategies used by Fortune 500 companies. Okay, and whether it is for your own personal enjoyment or building your own brand per se, my goal is to provide you with the best content available in the entire world. Okay, quality is the key here for success. So I want to specialize in quality and giving you the best material possible for your marketing principles and strategies. The show you're watching now, the Triple J podcast, has what I like to call shows within the show. Okay, the show you're watching here today is a Real Talk segment. Okay, Real Talk is basically a 5 to 20 minute segment where I give you some real talk advice, counsel, and sometimes I share with you different marketing principles that I think would be valuable to you as the listener. But we don't just have real talks here, okay? Other times during the show, we will have a Q&A segment, whereas I'm sure you've guessed by now, you provide the questions and I give you the answers. If there is a question that comes to your mind either during this show or after you're watching this show, there are a couple of different ways in which you can ask those questions, okay? The first way is to simply message me on my LinkedIn at Nick Jeldricks. Okay, that is going to be the fastest way for me to answer your questions and to see them. Okay, there are a couple different ways that you can do it outside of that as well. You can also email me your questions at triplejstudios with 2 S's at gmail.com. Or what you can do is go to my website at triplejstudios.com and you can fill out the contact form there. Okay, and all 3 of those ways in which I covered just now are going to be linked down below in today's show notes. So that way, if you guys forget, it's always going to be there. And in addition, it will always be in every single episode show note. So that way, if you find one eventually later on or a couple weeks down the road, you're always going to be able to have those links available to you. Okay, so that's our Q&A segment. We also have another one of my favorites, which is called PTI, or Peruse the Internet. Okay, and basically what happens in these shows is I basically review and take a look at 3 emerging marketing trends, principles, strategies, or just news floating out there within the business world. And I provide you my insight, my take, and if you should or should not incorporate these strategies. We also have our marketing case study show, which is where I give a deep dive in on my latest marketing case study. The last episode that I just filmed was over a marketing case study. So if you want to go take a look at that episode, go take a look at it after listening to this Real Talk. The final type of show format that we have on the Triple J podcast is our typical run-of-the-mill show where I invite a guest on and we basically share thoughts on personal development, marketing, branding, personal development, whatever you want. It's more so a conversational type of style, whereas like if I'm getting a cup of coffee with someone or getting a drink by the cooler at a typical grad party, I guess you could say. That is in the works currently, and I'm excited to share with you that episode here very soon. But before we begin this Real Talk, I have this one little thing that I like to call the fee. Okay, and it's not related to any money. It's not related to you following me on social media, subscribing to my newsletter. It's not any of that. Okay, the only thing that I ask is if you enjoy this show, you take something from it, you find it valuable, if it makes you think, makes you laugh, or you think this would be great for one of your friends to take a look at it, the only thing that I ask is that you share the show. That's it. Okay, it's a simple way of saying thank you for putting out all the content, and it lets me know that what I'm doing is something worthwhile and valuable to you. And in turn, if you don't find the show valuable, then I ask you not to share it. But obviously, since value is the number one thing I prioritize, this is going to be valuable today, especially today's episode. So let's dive into it. Let's dive into this Real Talk that I have today. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I came up with this topic that I'm about to talk about on my walk just this week. I was just walking around by trail. There's a trail by our house. It's like quarter mile away. It's beautiful. And it was probably about 8 o'clock at night, and I was just walking around, still a little light out, and I thought of this big principle. And so the principle that I want to share with you today is really cool and fascinating, because this not only relates to your life in the business world, not just within marketing, but also your personal life and how you grow as an individual. Okay, this is big. So this is the whole dynamic I want to talk about, which is the difference between influence, authority, and power. There's a big difference in that, and I'm going to provide you real life examples in both the business world and in your personal world that you can easily relate. So get out your notepad, get out your phone, take some notes, whatever you want. I think this one is going to be extremely valuable to all of you listening. So let's start with influence. What's the definition of influence? Well, influence essentially is persuading someone into a particular product, a belief, a service, or an idea. Okay? They cannot tell them that you have to do this. It is simply saying, hey, you know what? This is what I do, and this is what I want to share with you on what you should do. Okay? Obviously, this plays a big role within the business world pertaining to marketing. Okay, so if you've seen or read any of my marketing case studies or listened to any of those episodes, you know that brands, especially Fortune 500 companies, love to prioritize influencer marketing for a couple reasons. One, ultimately, it's because it works. Okay, it gets people's attention. But the bigger reason that I want to point out is that it is the least expensive but most effective way to reach your audience. Okay, you can go through and create all the different ads in Facebook that you want. Okay, that's still a great way to reach your audience. But the reason why Fortune 500 companies typically go towards this route is because they have the money available to spend, and they know that they're saving money and time in the long run. The influencers that companies are reaching out to, these people already have an established audience. They already have a desired target market, an audience that's already following them. So why not tap into those set audiences to help them migrate people from one interest into another? Okay, so big companies like Nike specialize in this. Okay, and the recent case study that I just put out on my LinkedIn covers this most recently with part 2 of my Nike Air Max DN case study series. So there will be an episode coming out on that soon. But in a nutshell, that is influence. So what is authority? Authority is a little different. It's a little more than what influence is. So authority basically takes the same attributes and aspects as influence in terms of persuading people into a product, idea, belief. But now they have the responsibility and action to say, no, like we as a unit are going to do this. Okay? So this particularly relates to the business world when it comes to your boss. Okay, your boss has the authority to tell you, hey, as a team, this is what we're going to work on. This is the exact type of social media channel that we want to focus on, okay? They will give you influence and say, hey, go create different strategies, go build different campaigns, create different ideas that can be helpful in this case. But as a team, we are moving in that direction. We are moving towards a social media direction. We are moving towards this narrative within our deliverables, okay? So they have the authority in making that decision. So what is power? Power is a little different than authority, okay? Power is, it doesn't matter what your team thinks, this is what's going on and this is what it's going to make, and I make the final word, okay? So a lot of times people in sense of power, okay, they have the option to exercise this type of practice. Okay, it really comes down to a couple things. One is intentions, and 2 is trustworthiness. Okay, if you have good intentions and you trust your team, ultimately you should never have to exercise your power. You really shouldn't have to. Okay, in some circumstances, Executives do this. It happens. I get it. That's life. But ultimately, your goal as the CEO, as the business owner, okay, if you have a team that's working with you and for you, your goal should be to limit the amount of power you exercise as much as you possibly can, and instead to use your authority when needed, okay? Just like in business, as the CEO, you know you are doing a great job when you can move down that ladder as much as you can. If you can step away from the power and authority and just go towards influence, that means your team is on the same page as you. It's a synergized unit. They have the same beliefs, the same values, and the same goals as you. The only difference is that technically you are above them in terms of the business owner and as the CEO, and they're just a manager or an employee. Okay, your goal is to be the influencer in that case. The more you have to exercise that power, the more harm it may cause your company. So that in a nutshell is the difference between influence, authority, and power. So that was the whole business side of things. But how does this relate to the personal life that you have and what you're building? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Let's dive into this. So the best way that I can describe influence, authority, and power is through parenthood, okay? I'm not a parent, but I kind of understand this methodology and ideology behind it. And I think it's a great analogy to use. So I want to share this with you. So here's the deal. When you were first born, okay, 0 days old, okay, minutes old, okay, your parents had the power over you. They did. Because here's the thing. You cannot, as a 2-minute-old, week-old, month-old, whatever, you don't have the capability and the conscious to make your own decisions, okay? In a sense, your parents are making all of your decisions for you because that's how it is. That's the only way to do it. Your parents are not going to say to a month-old, like, oh, you know what? If he wants to go to the bathroom, he can. Or, oh, he wants a glass of water? Just have him go get it. It's not like that because you don't have the conscious to make your own decisions. Okay? Power is used in both personal and professional when the person in that position wants to make the decisions for everybody else, thinking that they don't have a conscious. Okay? And in parenthood, yeah, a week-old child is not going to have a conscious to go and do the necessary functions of a human being. Okay? That's not how it is, and that's how it should be. Okay? When it comes to parenting, your goal is just like the CEO. Okay, you are the CEO of your family. Your goal when it comes to raising a child is very simple. You want to move as they get older. You want to move from a position of power to a position of authority to a position of influence. And then ultimately, your goal should be to have your children be as independent as they possibly can so they can restart that cycle with their own kids. And so on and so forth and so on and so forth. Okay, that is how civilization has worked for thousands and thousands of years. A little history lesson for you. But that's in a nutshell what it is. So once you get to toddler stages or grade school age, okay, your parents will go from a position of power to a position of authority. So now as a toddler or being in grade school per se, you have the conscious and capability to make your own decisions. Okay, as you should. But there are still going to be parameters and guidelines in place so that your parents can guide you and have the authority to have you go into the direction that's going to be the most fruitful and safe and beneficial for you later on in life. Okay, people would call this discipline. Okay, if you act out of line, okay, depending on what it is, there's discipline involved, as there should be. And ultimately, I think a big reason why there's many problems in today's world is because there is a lack of discipline. But that's for another real talk. Won't get too much into that. Ultimately, these guidelines they have are authority. So if I'm 8 years old and I just want to eat candy all day, okay, even though I technically can do it, my parents are going to have the authority to say, no, we're not going to do that. Instead, you're going to eat actual food that's going to be filling, that's nurturing, that's actually going to be beneficial to your body, okay? It's not just good for your health. It's also important to treat your body like a temple, okay? It says that in scripture. So once you get past the authority stage, now let's say you're in high school and college, okay? Now your parents go from an authority standpoint, for the most part, and go towards one of influence. Okay, so now you're old enough to know what's right and wrong. Hopefully you know the difference between what's right and what's wrong. Okay, especially when you get to that college standpoint, let's say you move out. Okay, now your parents have influence, but ultimately you are the driver. You are in the driver's seat of your life. So your parents can say, hey, why don't you go and do this? Or hey, why don't you go and explore this option or work part-time at said company? Okay, they can provide you with the influence to make good decisions in your life, but ultimately the decision maker shifts from the parents and now on to you. Okay, that is how life and parenting works. And a lot of times in parenthood, that can be a really hard transition. Okay, ideally, parents know when that happens, but sometimes it happens unexpectedly due to other decisions being made. That's how it is. It's also how life works. But ultimately, the overarching goal as a parent is to move from a position of power to a position of authority to a position of influence, and then ultimately have your children move towards independence. Okay, that is the goal. Okay, if your parents still held a position of power over you when you are 16 years old, making every decision ever for you, okay, that's really challenging for both the parent and for the child, and in turn might lead to other problems later on down the road. That's how it is. Okay, if a parent were to have a position of influence, if a parent were to have a position of influence for a 2-year-old and not really taking care of them, well, what's going to happen? Well, a 2-year-old isn't going to know what's right and what's wrong, and chaos will typically stir out of it. So your goal as a parent is to move through that line as gradiently as you possibly can to have your people be as independent as they possibly can. Same thing with the CEO. Your goal is to move from a position of power to a position of influence, and if you're able to, move to a position of independence, so that way they're all on their own, they're thriving, they're doing great. And typically, people that move into independence have higher roles within the company. Okay, whether it's a manager, a director, a principal, whoever it is. Okay, those people are seen as independent, and so they move on, and that process will restart. Okay, so how are you as a manager? Make some guideline decisions, move towards it, and then they move up. It's how the world works in both professional life and in parenting. From a 23-year-old, it seems a little funky, but roll with me. It's valuable either way. So that is the real talk for today. I hope you enjoyed and took a good amount of notes from it. Okay, if you have any questions related to a Q&A or related to this real talk, make sure you ask those questions in the 3 different ways listed down below. Make sure you pay the fee and share the show if you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.